Hi, folks. Welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. A lot of things going on today in the news, but we're going to cover just a couple of things and then, well, maybe just go off on a bunch of rabbit trails and start talking about other things. Who knows? It has been raining all day here. The good kind of rain, not all rain or really any rain is bad in the long run, but especially for us that have gardens. But today it's just been one of those slow, steady, unrelenting kind of rains. And that's always good to kind of get seeds that's been planted and plants that's been planted to give them a good drink of water. It's better than the torrential downpours that flood gardens and make it actually harder to get plants started. So that's a good thing. So apparently now, Biden and his administration has told all of those people that he left behind in Sudan that you probably need to get out in the next 24 to 48 hours. Now, for those of you that have been living under a rock and hasn't kept up with this, and that's not a knock to you, there's just a lot of things going on, and maybe you haven't kept up on this one. Sudan is in the midst of, I guess you could call it a civil war. It's really a proxy war. If you look at it, you've got two opposing sides within Sudan fighting for primacy, and one is being backed by the United States, and the other one is being backed by the Russians. So it's very similar in some ways to what's going on in Ukraine, kinda, not really, but the fact is that it's another proxy war that United States and Russia's gotten themselves into, and virtually every country in the world that have people there have been pulling their people out, pulling their diplomats out, pulling their citizens out. Well, last week, the United States sent a bunch of military personnel into Sudan and pulled out about 70 or so U.S. diplomats and their staff out of the embassy, which was great, except they left about 14 to 16,000 American citizens still in Sudan. And let me tell you, and I'm not going to show you really any of the videos or anything because they're pretty graphic, but it's quite horrific. If any of you that's watched all kinds of stuff. I mean, just think of like Mogadishu kind of footage where people are being bludgeoned to death in the streets. Very horrific, graphic stuff that's going on. It's bad. And there's, 15 or so, more or less, thousand United States citizens in country. And of course, much like what we did in Afghanistan, we've left them. Now they're saying you need to get out. You need to get out because it's going to get really bad, and who knows how bad it is or how bad it's going to get. But I just wanted to bring that up because it just shows you where we are as a nation. The whole, I guess, no man left behind thing doesn't really mean anything anymore, especially with this administration. And I understand if there are Americans that just want to stay and they don't want to come out, you can't always force them. But from what I understand, there was not really any effort made to get any of those people out. They got the embassy workers, and that's it. And now that the official American contingency, the embassy and the military have left, not only did they leave Americans there, they left Americans there with no safe place to go, because typically in a foreign country, if you can make it to the embassy, you can get some protection there. And now they don't even have that. So, Americans, it's a sad thing, and I remember them in your prayers. That I have no doubt that there will be some horrific things happen. Because that's just how things go in these matters. Want to show you a picture, and this is not necessarily an official thing, so I know the critics are going to say, "Oh, come on, this is one man's pipe dream." It's possible. There is a guy that out of Austria, the country. And he does a lot of work with NGOs, NATO NGOs, non-government organizations. and he and several others are starting a movement for NATO, Europe, NATO, the West, to take over, to go into Russia, take Russia over, and to break Russia up into much smaller places and basically divvy up the booty to all the NATO countries. Here's a picture of the guy, and who he is doesn't really matter so much. But this here is a map, and he's traveling all around. If you get on his Twitter page, he talks about how he's apparently a Freemason, and he takes pictures where he's pushing this stuff, and he's going around the countries in Europe and the United States. But you can see this here. This is all Russia, big country, and it's all getting broken up. That's what at least they're pushing, this decolonization of the Moscow Empire, the so-called Russian Federation. This is the kind of stuff that Putin and Russians and Russian leadership sees, and they say, I'm sure, I'm assuming, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but I would assume that they see this kind of stuff, and they say to themselves, we cannot lose this war, no matter what it takes. We can't. If it's the last man alive, last Russian alive, we have to keep fighting. And if it means we have to use drastic measures like nuclear weapons, we cannot lose. We cannot lose. We cannot lose. That's what if I was in any kind of Russian leadership, that's what I would be saying, seeing this kind of stuff. And although this guy may be on the fringe, stuff that mainstream politicians in the West have said over the last year aren't too much different than this. That Russia has to be put under control. There has to be major constraints. NATO and the G7 are considering an all-out sanctions on all Russian exports, just across the board, everything. We're gonna put sanctions on everything coming out of Russia. And I'm sure what that's going to do is, instead of hurting Russia, it's probably going to hurt the U.S. dollar. In fact, Janet Yellen, the Secretary of the Treasury, said so. But she said we still, it's the righteous thing to do. It's the right thing to do these sanctions, even though it could tank the U.S. dollar. Because that's why we're seeing this rapid de-dollarization happen in just the last 6 to 12 months, because we've put so many sanctions on Russia. And Russia is a big player when it comes to energy, that all these countries are like, listen, we can't deal without Russian energy, so we'd rather just deal without the U.S. dollar. And that's what's happening, and we're getting this snowball effect. I want to point out to you, and I didn't create this idea. This was from somewhere else. I don't even remember where. I wish I could give it credit. And this may ruffle some feathers, and some of you may agree to this. Some of you may have already thought about this. I am not on here, and I've said this from the beginning, to say whether or not Russia is in the right or the wrong. I think all sides are wrong. I don't believe that Putin and Russia are this righteous beacon up on a hillside. I mean, they definitely have some things right, more right than America does right now, but they still are not a free country, and there's still a lot of things that are being done that are wrong. But just strictly from the war, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, there are a lot of similarities when you compare that to the United States invading Iraq. And I don't remember the whole world saying that America should be sanctioned and broken up and divvied up to the rest of the world. We went into Iraq on very sketchy reasons. Most of those reasons turned out to not be true. We completely destroyed that country, killed its leadership, destroyed its infrastructure, occupied it for many, many years. And, of course, Iraq still is in shambles and is in nowhere near the capacity that it once was. All for reasons that, well, at least the official narrative, the reasons we gave didn't exist. not really any kind of real legal reasons. We did it because we could. And if you compare that to Russia invading Ukraine, the differences aren't a whole lot. So I just wanted to point that out because a lot of people still want to spin it that America's in the right and defending all this good stuff, and they're not. If you look at the stuff that's, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, I get that is going on in Ukraine and that has been going on. It's horribly corrupt, and I think a lot of us have kind of forgotten, or maybe not forgotten. We just haven't been thinking about it because there's so many other things going on, and we're kind of burnt out on the whole Ukraine thing. You know, I'm sick and tired of seeing the flags and the people that are, oh, Ukraine is the greatest thing in the world. We gotta just support it no matter what. They have a ridiculously corrupt and I feel pretty evil leader, especially when you look at his very, very checkered past. The fact that it's basically been a money laundering center for the West, and the real atrocities that goes on, everything between chemical labs and viral labs, and all the way to human trafficking, sex trafficking, all the kind of stuff that goes on in Ukraine. It's not really a good deal. In the end, America has no business being in here. We have no business telling Russia what they can and can't do, especially since we did a very similar thing to Iraq not that many years ago. So if we can do that to Iraq, then, I guess Russia can do what they're doing to Ukraine. All of this, when you lump in what's going on with China, when you lump in what's going on with just the breakdown of civility in this country, to shift gears just a little bit, I think you and I need to take our personal defense and the possible chance for facing real violent possibilities in the future real. This is something that most Americans just don't think about. Between the rapid increase of chaos and violence in American streets already, and the fact that we could very easily be seeing some type of major World War III scenario in the next 6 to 12 months, probably a lot sooner, but let's just say 6 to 12 months. We could be seeing ourselves in a pretty precarious position as individuals trying to protect our own. And we talk a lot about the economy on here. We talk a lot about spiritual preparedness. We talk a lot about food preparedness, growing gardens, moving out away from these population centers that are filled with all kinds of horrible atrocities. We also need to be thinking and talking about how we're going to protect ourselves. Do you think about that much? A lot of you do. A lot of you are actively training. You've come from a military or maybe a law enforcement background, and you're actively working towards it and training and practicing and gathering your gear and stuff. Some of you, not so much. You need to be working on that. I can't guarantee that you're going to have to use those skills and those tools, but the way things are looking and the things that I read, and especially in the Bible, it's very possible that we may see a time that large amounts of this country are faced with that type of violence. And so you need to be prepared for it. You need to be stocking up ammunition. I'm in a mostly just to kind of keep tabs on what's going on in the world, but I'm on an online forum, and it's for gold and silver buyers and stackers, and there's a lot of experts in there. And so there was a thread a few days ago about silver, what people were predicting in the group. Was it going to keep going up? Is it going to, come down for a little bit, have a good buying time, and then go back up? All this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, the whole conversation switched to, well, silver's great, gold's great, probably should be, putting a little bit of that aside, but you better be putting some lead aside too, Because if you can't protect what you're growing, where you're at, the gold and the silver you have stored away, it's a waste of time. You need to be stocking up on some lead. And it was funny how the whole thread switched from stocking gold and silver to buying up and stocking up on ammo. And you're probably going to need more than you think. The average loadout for a soldier going out, to fight is usually around 240 rounds. 8 30-round magazines for AR-15 platform. And if you have 3 or 4 of those loadouts of ammunition, that sounds great, but you don't have a resupply chain like you do in the military. So you need to be your own resupply chain. And honestly, 5 to 10,000 rounds I don't think is anywhere near too much. Those are probably minimal numbers. So you need to have that stocked up, or the ability to reload your own. You need to be training. You need to have the proper equipment. You may not need 50 different guns. You may only need 2. Don't worry about the numbers. Make sure what you have works and functions, and you've got backup parts, and you know how to use it properly. And having a few extras is fine, but we're not in the collecting business anymore, folks. We're in the finding the useful tools business and learning how to use them properly and maintaining them. So those are something that I would certainly be encouraging you to do. When we're looking at all of this global conflict and all of this domestic conflict, I think we already have. We're not entering, we're in it. I don't know that it's peaked yet. I don't think it's even come close to peaking yet. But we're definitely in a phase of our of human existence of just increased violence. And at some point, the odds are going to continue going up that you will be faced with that kind of violence. And so you need to make sure that you're prepared in that way with the tools and the ammunition to feed those tools and the training that you need to use those tools. You just do. And you need to be practicing on a regular basis. You don't go out and get training and then never do anything with it. You practice regularly. So you also need ammunition for practice. And to me, those are 2 separate things. You have your stockpile of ammo and you have your training ammo. Get this stuff taken care of. And don't tell me that, I'm older or I have a disability or, I've never shot a gun before. You all can do that. You may be and this isn't to offend anyone, you may be a little old grandma sitting in a wheelchair. And you're thinking, I can't go out and I can't do combat stuff. No, you can't, but, you can have a little pistol in your apron or something like that to protect yourself as a kind of the last-ditch effort. And so you probably should have that and then know how to use it and train and practice as much as possible. This war beat, this drum beat for war is getting worse, and we're seeing violence pop up all over the world. Not just here in America. This Sudan thing is just one of the latest things. We're constantly over in the Korean Peninsula just poking around like we're just hoping that North Korea does something. We're constantly saber rattling and trying to look like we still have some with China, just seeing when China is just going to finally say, all right, let's get this on. Same thing with Russia. We're constantly saying we're going to seize more of this and sanction more of that. And at some point, Russia's going to have enough, and they're going to look at maps like that one I just showed you and say, listen, we've crossed the point of no return. It's survive or die. I mean, we go all the way or we die. And when Russia gets to that point, we're in a really bad place, folks. Regardless of how powerful you think Russia is, they have a lot of nuclear weapons. And even if some of those nukes don't work anymore, odds are there's still enough to get the job done. You need to be getting ready, folks, and preparing accordingly for this kind of stuff too. Yes, growing food is paramount. Having medical supplies is very important. Building communities and tribes and relationships, very, very important stuff. Protecting your family from the vile, wicked immorality of this world. Super, super important. But you also better be ready to protect it all and know how to do it when that time comes. Folks, it's time to get your houses in order and to prepare yourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.